Pokemon. We all know it, we all love it. Our love is so great, in fact, that it extends to the spin-off titles. Especially lately for me, since I can't really focus on the mainline games right now because they're a bit of a mess. But Pokemon has a lot of spin-off titles. It's hard not to keep myself occupied by replaying them a lot. I've been playing a few of them for my upcoming retrospective videos, and then it dawned on me. I have a hard time deciding what the best spin-off title is. Which one out of all of these games would be like my most recommended to someone who's never played a Pokemon spin-off before? Hence, you know, my idea for creating this video. Now, in this list, we're going to be looking over 4 main categories to decide which of these spin-off titles is the best out of all of Pokemon. We'll be looking at story, gameplay, polish, and memorability. Now, before we begin, there's going to be a few exclusions from this list. For one, these will all be video games, so Pokemon card game, you're out. I'll also be talking about only one game per spin-off series, so I've opted to choose the games that embody that series to the fullest. It's also worth noting that I'm only going to be going over 7 titles in this video. This is because I'm only going to be talking about the spin-off Pokemon games that have left a reputation, fan favorites that have managed to stay relevant. However, this brings me to my 3 and final exemptions. Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, while many consider these spin-off titles and these have definitely left a big impact, I just think they're much more comparable to the main series rather than these spin-off games. And sadly, the last exemption is going to be Pokemon Conquest, which I'm so sorry not to include, but I literally know next to nothing about this game except that it reviewed well. I could have just placed it in a spot based on that, but from what I hear, it wouldn't be fair unless I played it myself. I just prefer for a game with such a seemingly high caliber to get the treatment that it deserves. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get this list started. Number 7 is Pokemon Ranger. I remember being a little boy and just looking online and seeing Pokemon Ranger screenshots all over the internet. A bunch of Pokemon following the trainer? Count me in. I figured the gameplay was going to be a little different, and sure enough, mighty different it was. For anyone who doesn't know, Pokemon Ranger is a game where you play with the Nintendo DS stylus and you draw circles around the Pokemon that you're trying to quote-unquote catch. This gameplay was serviceable, and it's a lot harder than it sounds, because obviously drawing circles around a Pokemon would be rather easy, right? Well, the Pokemon like to move around a lot, and they also like to attack and do things to the field that makes it hard for you to draw the circles without touching them. So yeah, there were a few difficulty spikes here and there, and I remember getting extremely frustrated at times. But it was a decent enough experience that 2 sequels to this title came out later. But I'll be honest, it was all very samey. The story was definitely not anything to write home about. The gameplay was, I'll be blunt, pretty bad. The polish was definitely there, but all in all, this was the least memorable experience out of all 7 games that I'm going to be going over. Sorry, Mr. Ranger. Number 6 is Pokemon Stadium. Now, I'm not going to be talking about the battle portions, because again, that's something that would be more compared to the mainline series, but Pokemon Stadium brought along with it some mini-games. A lot of mini-games actually, especially in Pokemon Stadium 2, which I think is the most representable in the Stadium series. So what this game lacks is obviously very much story, but the gameplay provided hours of endless fun, especially if you had friends. Which I didn't, but there were a few families I knew that sometimes let me play it with them. Well anyways, yeah, these games are obviously very memorable and they're still referenced a lot today. But I'll admit, the polish for these minigames wasn't that great. Then again, they didn't need to be, they were just minigames, and on the Nintendo 64 at that. Number 5 is Pokemon Go. Need I even jog your memory on how big this game was when it first released? You want to know the funny thing though? It's still pretty damn big. Hell, even I still play it, especially since they added that feature where you get to pet your buddy because it's so damn cute. I'm constantly switching between Piplup, Togepi, Togetic, Phanpy, and more. They're all just so cute, I can't stop. Anyways, story is non-existent, and no, that stuff with stopping Team Rocket does not count. The gameplay has gotten a little better, but it's still pretty monotonous. It's worth pointing out though that it's super addicting, and it gets major points for getting all of us lazy bums up out of our seat and going outside. The polish has gotten much better, but it's still a bit lacking, especially for any unfortunate souls out there that might have a semi-unrelevant phone. It can use a bit more optimizing, but the true shiner here is the memorability. I don't think anyone's gonna forget that portion of 2016 when this game first released. Couple that with how frequent the updates are and how many people still play this game, you got yourself a successful Pokemon spin-off, and honestly one of the best ones out there. Number 4, Pokemon Snap. Oh, this game did such a good job of taking all of these cute and awesome Pokemon and putting them in natural habitats. I'm so shocked that there has never been a sequel to this game. Although, semi-spoilers for later, there is another game that came as a spin-off that had snapshot mechanics in it and had Pokemon in their natural habitats. But we'll get to that later. Now, there was obviously not very much of a story in this game, if any at all, which I'm sure you've noticed has been a trend for all these higher up on the list. But Pokemon Snap excels in every other category. It's so fun and addicting to go over these levels repeatedly, trying to get that perfect snapshot of that Pokemon, just doing its thing. The animations are gorgeous, the environments are interesting, and as I'd hope for something so simple, yes, it is polished up very well. Ah yes, people still remember this game to this day. And again, we're all still asking, why has there not been a proper sequel to this? But hey, Pokemon Company, do whatever the fuck you want. Go ahead and keep releasing shitty Pokemon mainline games every year, whatever. I, and many others, will continue to dream of a Pokemon Snap 2. Number 3, Pokken Tournament. Now this game is what I call gameplay. And obviously, as it's real-time combat, it probably has the deepest gameplay out of every one of the spin-off games that I'm talking about. Seriously, this game is really fun to play. It bridges the gap between being casual or competitive. It's satisfying, has a huge roster, and the benefit of being a fighting game means it's endlessly replayable. Obviously, the DX version on the Switch is the one we're looking at. Therefore, even though the Wii U version had plenty of polish to begin with, the Switch version just takes everything up to just as finely polished as possible. And like I said, since it's endlessly replayable, it has a lot of memorability, especially since there's a competitive scene for it. Now, number 2. If Pokken Tournament put the gameplay in the gameplay category, then Pokemon Mystery Dungeon puts the story in the story category. This is going to be a real fun game to talk about, and we're going to be looking at Pokemon Mystery Dungeon 2, Explorers of Time, Darkness, and Sky. Now, I really mean it though, the story in these games are so good, especially in PMD2, like the story goes places you would never expect a Pokemon game to go. I actually talked about this a lot in another video, but long story short, Mystery Dungeon explores a lot of really dark themes. These games will leave you crying, no joke. But Mystery Dungeon doesn't just stop with the story. These games are really well rounded. Especially looking at Mystery Dungeon 2, the gameplay is really deep and tactical. It's paced well, spacing and placement in the dungeons is important, and there's something so satisfying to me about the rhythm of completing these dungeons. Not to mention gratifying helping out all the Pokemon in this little world. Mystery Dungeon 2 is a highly polished product, and an unforgettable experience for anyone who's ever played it through to the end. The only thing holding this game back from being number 1 on this list is, I feel like the tactical gameplay in it is really an acquired taste. It's a lot like Fire Emblem's gameplay. You either love it or you hate it. But you know what Pokemon spin-off title is so well rounded that I could easily recommend it to anybody? Yeah, well, that game is Pokmon Park 2. I mean, seriously, this game has everything you could ask for in a Pokemon spin-off game. Let's dissect it a bit, shall we? So, the story might not be as involved or deep as Mystery Dungeon, but that doesn't mean it's not a damn good story. While it didn't make me bawl my eyes out, it still made me cry a little bit. I mean, really, how could you not after Piplup gave his life to save you? The characters are really fun, I especially love Snivy. And just like Mystery Dungeon, you can see the passion that the developers poured into this game through its polish, which I won't talk too much about since I'll be making an entire retrospective on this game relatively soon. But really, there's a wide variety of gameplay. You got mini-games, and even outside the plethora of those, you have real-time combat fights, you can play tag, hide and go seek, and more! Oh yeah, and with what I said earlier, this is the game that has the Pokemon living in their habitats, and you can take screenshots in first person of them just doing their thing. See, this game is a culmination of everything I've talked about before. It's all just wrapped up in this fun, cute bundle that you just can't take your hands off of. I just want to live in this little cute world of Pokemon for the rest of my life. This game just really checked all the marks off for me, and I think it's the best Pokemon spin-off title ever. But hey, did my list match yours? Whether it did or didn't, let me know in the comment section. But not before smashing that subscribe button and the little thumbs up just to let me know if I did a good job or not. And afterwards, I have a link to my Patreon in the description if you want to join in supporting me there. Until the next video, I'll see you all later.